Howdy y'all, and welcome back for another episode of the Kireth Esports Drift University. My name's Nader, and in today's episode, I'm going to be showing y'all what's turning out to be my absolute favorite tune on GT7, and that's going to be for the Fairlady Z version S Z33 2007 edition. I'm also going to be going through a few different aspects so I can compare different cars in different episodes. Some of this includes how good the car is at high and low speeds, how well it transitions in an angle, how well it holds that angle once you transition into it, and lastly, and most importantly, how sendable is the car. So before I get into it, if y'all don't mind, if you could just hit that like and subscribe button real quick, it really helps out the channel a lot and it helps to boost us. So if you like the content, please, if you don't mind supporting it, it honestly helps out so much when you do. So first of all, let's go ahead and run through the tune real quick. So starting out, of course, as always, we got Comfort Hard tires. Using Comfort Hards just kind of helps to keep lobbies similar for tandems. You can technically use like Comfort Mediums or Comfort Softs. It honestly just helps to keep similar tunes in lobbies and to keep everybody having the same kind of car, and it just makes tandems a lot smoother. So coming down to the height, I went about 10 clicks up in the rear and 20 in the front. I usually try to do this to where it's not too slammed in the rear, and then you want a bit of a difference in the front. You want the car kind of leaning back and getting weight distribution to the rear. And then coming down to the anti-roll bars and all of the suspension, I pretty much have this car set up pretty soft. It's a pretty grippy car naturally. It's not quite as grippy as the Corvette, but it's definitely a lot grippier than something like the S15. So you don't necessarily have to worry about trying to get too much grip through the suspension. I pretty much was just focusing on getting the car to just feel comfortable and to feel smooth. And then the car pretty much just let me not have to worry about finding more grip through the suspension, which was pretty nice. And then coming down to the differential, I have that fully locked out. I usually don't unlock that if I ever get into comps, which hopefully if they fix the server soon, I'll be getting into them here quickly. But until then, I usually just leave it locked because I don't necessarily need to find that extra speed. I'm just trying to get the car to feel as predictable and consistent as I can, and having a locked differential will help out with that a lot. And then coming over to the aerodynamics, I don't think I really touched that much at all. I might even turn it down a little bit. Like I was saying, didn't really need to find much more grip in the car. It's pretty much already got it, and so I thought it's probably best not to mess with it and maybe even give a little bit of room when it comes to the aerodynamics and how much downforce you have. So yeah, I turned it down a bit. I went with 30 and 130, and it's been feeling pretty great with that. And of course, ECU and performance adjustment, I just kind of left those full for now. Coming down to the transmission, so as typical, I went with 270 kilometers an hour for the top speed, and then as far as the gearing goes, it's definitely a bit of a longer transmission compared to what I usually use, but it's honestly been pretty great. Primarily, you're only going to be really using third and fourth. Maybe if you just transition to a lot of angle, or if you're throwing a big entry, you might need to use second, or if you're coming onto a straight where you're monging or some pretty long corner. But other than that, third and fourth are pretty much going to be your sweet spot as far as the gears come, and they've been feeling pretty good to me. The only thing I will say about the transmission, especially when you get into the area where you need to use fifth or sixth gear, you definitely will want to be careful as you're dropping down in gears. I recommend using a bit of left foot braking, and I'll get to where I have my brake bias set up here in a sec too. But it definitely, when you're coming down in gears from fifth or sixth, it is going to have a bit of wheel spin on you. You can definitely control it. You just have to kind of figure out what it wants to do with that and figure out how to control that and how to help guide it into the corner through that. Coming over the brake bias, I typically go -4 to the front. It just helps a lot to have all your brakes to the front, and then I like to just have a little bit coming to the rear, because like I was saying, with the wheel spin coming out of fifth and sixth gear, having a little bit of brake in the rear helps to control that wheel spin as you're coming down in gears, and it just helps to let you guide the car in. The only other thing I would say I forgot to mention is I usually honestly like to go with just the stock brake system. I will go like racing brake pads usually, but I don't like to overdo it. Just having the stock brakes is a bit easier for tandeming. When you have racing brakes, they are a little bit too powerful. So like if you're in a tandem, it'll probably bring you off the door a little bit too much, or if anybody's trying to follow you, it's going to be a lot more unpredictable and harder to follow if you have strong brakes. So I typically like to just go with the stock brakes, and it honestly just feels a lot better to me, as well as it just makes it easier for the people around you too. Alright, so now one more thing before I let you go is I'm going to go through a quick judging of this car real quick. First thing that we're going to judge is how well the car does in the high speed section. This, I will say, is honestly probably the weakest part of this car. It's just a bit tough in these longer, higher speed sections. I mean, naturally, with it not being the highest horsepower car, it kind of makes sense. But I'm going to go ahead and still give this about a 6 out of 10 because this thing still, for its power, I think does really well and can still hold some really good angle. So yeah, I think about a 6 out of 10 is pretty perfect for this, for describing how it feels in these sections. Next up, to judge how the car does in the lower speed sections, I decided to take it here to the front section at Topless. It's definitely a great section to show how the car does at lower speeds, and from what I gathered from it, I honestly will give the car a solid 9 out of 10. This is where the car has felt the most comfortable to me. This is where I've been kind of falling in love with the setup. It just feels a lot smoother through these sections. The car feels at home, and it's just a fun car to drive through them. But yeah, I'd probably give it a solid 9 out of 10 for the slow sections, honestly. I don't want to quite give the first car a perfect 10 out of 10, but I was definitely close to it. Next up, we have how well does the car transition into angle. In this, it kind of plays into the same thing of it's kind of switched in between high speed sections and the low speed sections. Like for the high speed sections, it's a bit tougher to get the car to want to hold angle straight from the transition. The car kind of catches itself a bit early, it seems sometimes, but when it comes to the lower speed sections, it honestly feels great. Like I can throw as much angle as I want into a transition and the car will feel pretty great. So yeah, I think for transitioning to angle, when you take in both low and high speed sections, I'm probably gonna give this a 7 out of 10. Like if I was just to do low speed, it would probably be an 8 or 9, but it's definitely the high speed sections again that are coming to hurt it. Like I'd probably gave it maybe a 4 or 5 in high speed sections, and that could just be on me and my skill. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tune a car for just anybody to be able to hop in and drift. Like I think most of what comes from good drifting ends up coming from the setup, and so when you have a setup that doesn't want to do something, it makes it that much harder, of course. Now when it comes to holding angle in high speed sections, it'll hold a good amount of angle, but it definitely won't hold as much as something, you know, like the Drift BRZ. But when it comes to low speed sections, it does pretty great. So I'm gonna give this one a solid 8 out of 10. Now lastly, and most importantly, of course, how sendable is the car? This is talking about like reverse entries, trying to send the car sideways and stuff. And yeah, I'm just gonna say yes for this car. I put that in my notes. I just said yes. This car, I mean, of course, with everything else being really comfortable with it, it all kind of adds up to this. But yeah, if you're trying to send a few back gears or something, the car feels amazing. Like as long as you drop gears well enough, it'll pull you out of almost anything. And it's pretty easy to get the car to go in there and control it without like just flipping the car instantly. And it's easy to transition into those big throws. The car doesn't just want to snap on you right away. Usually it'll just drift in there. It'll go in nice and smooth for a nice sideways entry. But yeah, the car feels like, as far as how sendable the car is, I definitely give it a solid 9 out of 10. So in the end, this car came out to having a total score of 39 out of 50. I'm hyped to see how that's going to compare to other cars as I make these videos, and I hope y'all enjoy this different kind of grading scale just to kind of put an aspect on what cars are better to drift in this game, or at least in my personal opinion. But yeah, and that's pretty much going to do it for this episode. Thank y'all again for watching. If you don't mind, if you haven't already, if you could hit that like and subscribe button, I I really enjoy making these videos. I'm going through just recording the audio right now, but this is my first project on Adobe Premiere for this channel, and so I'm really hoping it turns out well, and I'm hoping real soon I can start getting comfortable with the program and I can start making some great quality content for y'all. And so yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for this episode. Thank y'all again, and have a great one.